Just sign the paper, Nicole. Kyle's business profits are the only way we can afford the Silver Creek retirement community. My mother whispered this right into my ear, squeezing my shoulder hard enough to bruise. She wasn't comforting me, she was forcing me. On the table sat a quitclaim deed, a piece of paper that demanded I give up my 20% share of our family home for absolutely nothing. My father, Drake, didn't even look up. He just tapped the signature line, waiting for me to hand over $185,000 to my addict brother. They were sacrificing me to secure their own luxury future. I didn't argue. I picked up the pen and smiled. I signed my name with a steady hand because I knew something they didn't. That money wasn't going to Kyle. I signed my rights away without shedding a tear because I knew the game was already over. Before I tell you what happened the moment the wire transfer hit, drop a comment and let me know. Have you ever had to protect a family member from their own stupidity? Where are you watching from right now? The title officer, a woman with glasses thick enough to see the future, tapped the final key on her desktop. Wire initiated, she said, her voice dry as dust. $185,000 sent to the account of Kyle Ventures LLC. The room seemed to exhale. My mother, Harper, let out a sob that was half relief, half delusion. She hugged my father, Drake, burying her face in his shoulder like they had just survived a war, rather than just selling their only asset to fund a pipe dream. Drake patted her back, puffing his chest out, looking at Kyle with the pride of a king crowning a prince. They weren't seeing a transaction. They were seeing the Silver Creek retirement community, golf carts and heated pools. They were seeing a future where their golden child finally made them rich. Kyle leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking under his arrogance. He looked at me, a smirk playing on his lips that made my stomach turn. "Thanks for the donation, sis," he said, winking. "I know it's hard for a secretary to understand high-level capital acquisition, but don't worry. When the company goes public, I might hire you to answer the phones. We'll need someone to order the coffee." I didn't respond. I didn't defend my job title or remind him that risk assessment isn't secretarial work. I just opened my laptop. It was already sitting on the table in front of me, humming in sleep mode. I woke it up. The screen glowed, reflecting off the polished mahogany. To them, it probably looked like I was checking emails, hiding my embarrassment in work. But I wasn't checking email. I was logging into the commercial banking portal of First Horizon Bank. This was the part they always forgot about. Laziness isn't just a character flaw, it's a security risk. Because Kyle was too hungover to drive to the bank 6 months ago, he had begged me to set up the LLC's accounts at the same bank where I keep my personal savings. He wanted it done fast. He didn't want to deal with the paperwork. So the transfers weren't interbank wires that took 24 hours to clear. They were internal. They were instantaneous. I watched the screen. The balance on the dashboard for Kyle Ventures LLC flickered. Then it updated. $185,000. Green and beautiful. The house money had arrived. Kyle was busy high-fiving our father. "To the moon, Dad," he shouted. "First round of inventory is on me." I moved my cursor. I had already set up the transaction template 3 days ago. It was sitting in the drafts folder waiting for a trigger. Destination: Nicole Personal Savings. Memo: Debt settlement, priority lien enforcement. I didn't hesitate. I didn't feel a pang of guilt for the house my mother loved or the retirement my father craved. They had made their choice when they handed me the pen. Now I was making mine. I clicked transfer. The screen refreshed. The green bar flashed success. The balance on the LLC account dropped like a stone in a well. $0. I closed the laptop with a soft, definitive click. The sound was small, but in the sudden quiet of the room, it sounded like a gavel coming down. A second later, a notification chime pinged from the pocket of Kyle's jeans. He pulled his phone out, grinning, expecting to see a six-figure confirmation that would validate his entire existence. He unlocked the screen. The smile didn't fade immediately, it froze. It curdled. He squinted, tapping the glass with his thumb as if there were a smudge covering the numbers. He refreshed the page. He refreshed it again. The color drained out of his face so fast it looked like gravity had taken hold of his blood. "Dad?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "Dad, where's the money?" "It's a glitch," Drake said, his voice booming with the false confidence of a man who had never been told no by a computer. "Refresh it again, son. The bank's probably just processing the wire. Big money takes time." I watched them huddle over the phone, desperate to find a signal, desperate to find the reality where they were rich and safe. They looked so pathetic. And for a second I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. But then I remembered who I was. And more importantly, who they thought I was. For 5 years, my family had treated me like a glorified secretary. They told the neighbors I answered phones. They told the neighbors I filed papers. They didn't know, Because they never asked, that I am a senior risk assessor for commercial lending. My entire career is built on spotting liabilities before they become catastrophes. I don't answer phones. I audit the financial ruin of companies run by men exactly like my brother. Kyle wasn't an entrepreneur. He was a walking credit default swap. The truth they refused to see was simple. Kyle was a gambling addict. He didn't need seed money for a startup. He needed to pay off $200,000 in bad bets and maxed out credit cards before the court judgments started seizing his wages. 6 months ago he had come to me hungover and smelling of stale bourbon begging for help. "I need to go legit, Nick," he'd slurred. "Set up an LLC for me. You're good with the boring paperwork stuff." He was too lazy to do it himself. He didn't want to read the contracts. He just wanted a bank account he could dump money into. That was his mistake. Laziness is the architect of ruin. I remembered sitting in my kitchen drafting the operating agreement for Kyle Ventures LLC. I didn't use a standard template. I wrote clause 4.2 myself. It stated that the manager has sole discretion to distribute funds to settle any debts held by the manager against the member. And then came the security setup. I remembered handing him his phone when the bank sent the two-factor authentication code. He had waved it away, rubbing his temples. "Ugh, the beeping is killing my head. Just set the admin number to yours, sis. I don't want the alerts." He handed me the keys to the castle because he couldn't be bothered to carry them. I looked at my parents now, Harper clutching her pearls, Drake sweating through his collar. They knew Kyle was a mess. Deep down they had to know. You don't bail a son out of jail 3 times and think he's the next Elon Musk. But they chose the lie. They volunteered to be duped because the fantasy of the golden child was more comforting than the reality of the addict. They would rather sell their home to feed his delusion than admit they had failed as parents. They weren't victims. They were accomplices. But I wasn't. Weeks ago I had used a shell company to purchase a portfolio of distressed consumer debt for pennies on the dollar. It was a bundle of defaulted loans. Kyle's loans. I didn't need gangsters. I had court judgments. I was his primary creditor. Legally I owned him. "It's not a glitch," I said, my voice cutting through their panic like a scalpel. They all froze. Kyle looked up, his eyes bloodshot and wide. "I moved it," I said calmly. Clause 4.2 of the operating agreement. The manager pays the creditors first. And guess what, Kyle? You owe me a lot of money. You hacked it. Kyle screamed, his voice cracking like a teenager's. He shoved the phone into our father's face, his finger jabbing at the screen so hard I thought the glass would snap. "She stole it, Dad. He hacked the account. Call the police. Arrest her." Drake grabbed the phone, his eyes scanning the transaction history. He stared at the debit line, $185,000, and the beneficiary name, Nicole Personal Savings. The color didn't just leave his face, it fled. He looked up at me and for a second I saw confusion. But then it hardened into something much uglier. Pure, unadulterated hate. He didn't ask about the debt I mentioned. He didn't ask why Kyle owed me money or why I had purchased defaulted loans. He didn't ask if his son was in trouble with dangerous people. He didn't care about the why. He only cared about the where. "Give it back," Drake growled. It was a command, the same tone he used when I was 12 and he wanted the remote control. "Right now. Reverse it." "I can't," I said, leaning back in my chair, crossing my legs. "It's a debt settlement. It's legally binding. Besides, the money is already in a high-yield trust. It's locked." "You little witch." Drake slammed his hand on the mahogany table, making the title officer jump. "You jealous, spiteful little witch. You couldn't stand seeing your brother succeed, could you? You had to ruin it." "Succeed?" I laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Dad, he was going to wire that money to an offshore sports betting site. I didn't ruin his success. I prevented his felony." "Liar." Harper shrieked. She wasn't the soft, weeping mother anymore. She was a woman watching her luxury retirement evaporate. She stood up, her face twisted. "Kyle is a businessman. He has a vision. You're just a secretary who's jealous that we didn't sell the house for you." She pointed a trembling finger at me. "That was our money, Nicole. That was Silver Creek. That was the heated pool and the golf course and the meals prepared by chefs. We sold this house for us. We're going to be destitute because of you." I watched them, fascinated. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, except the car was made of narcissism and the wall was reality. They still didn't get it. I had just told them their son was a gambling addict with $200,000 in bad debt. I had told them I saved him from loan sharks. And their only reaction was to scream about their country club retirement. They didn't care if Kyle destroyed himself as long as he made them rich first. They weren't enabling him out of love. They were investing in him out of greed. Kyle was pacing the small room now, running his hands through his hair, his breathing ragged. The reality of his situation was starting to sink in. The money was gone. The house was sold. And the people he owed money to, the ones who didn't use lawsuits, were still waiting. You don't understand, Kyle panted, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. I need that money. Nick, seriously, stop playing. Transfer it back. They're going to kill me. Who is going to kill you, Kyle? I asked softly. The investors, he yelled, but his voice wavered. He looked at Dad, then at Mom. He couldn't admit it. He couldn't tell the Golden parents that he wasn't a genius entrepreneur, but a degenerate gambler. So he turned the rage back on me. He kicked the empty chair next to him. It flew across the room and crashed into the filing cabinet with a deafening metallic clang. You stole my life, he screamed, veins bulging in his neck. The title officer stood up, her face pale, reaching for the phone on her desk. I'm calling security. Don't you dare. Drake roared at her, then turned back to me, his eyes black. Fix this, Nicole. Or you are no daughter of mine. I think, I said, meeting his gaze with zero fear, that ship sailed the moment you handed me the pen. I didn't flinch at his ultimatum. No daughter of mine. It was a threat that might have shattered me when I was 20, desperate for his validation. But I wasn't 20 anymore. And I wasn't looking for a father. I was looking for a return on investment. I reached into my bag and pulled out the blue folder. It was thick, heavy with the weight of receipts, contracts, and the poor life choices of a man who thought the world owed him a living. I slid it across the mahogany table. It stopped inches from Drake's clenched fist. Sit down, Dad, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it had the specific cadence I used in boardrooms when I was about to tell a CEO his company was insolvent. And read. Drake didn't move. Harper, trembling, reached out and opened the folder. The first page was the operating agreement for Kyle Ventures LLC. I pointed to the highlighted paragraph. Section 4.2, I recited from memory. The manager has sole discretion to distribute funds to settle any debts held by the manager against the member. You signed that, Kyle. You didn't read it, but you signed it. So what? Kyle spat, wiping sweat from his forehead. I don't owe you anything. You're my sister, not a bank. That's where you're wrong. I flipped the page for him. Underneath the agreement were stacks of transfer documents. They were stamped with the seals of 3 different collection agencies and a private lending firm that operated in the gray areas of the law. 2 months ago, I incorporated a shell company, I explained, keeping my eyes on Kyle. I used it to purchase a portfolio of distressed consumer debt. Specifically yours. I bought your defaulted credit cards, your personal loans, and the gambling markers you signed over to those guys in Vegas. I bought them for pennies on the dollar because everyone else knew you were a bad bet. I now hold 3 separate court judgments against you, Kyle. Do you know what that makes me? I leaned forward. I'm not your sister right now. I am your priority creditor. And I just executed a collection. The room went dead quiet, just the AC humming and my parents' uneven breathing as they realized this wasn't a family fight. It was a foreclosure. You bought his debt? Harper whispered, staring at the documents like they could burn her. Why? To save him, I said flat. If I hadn't intercepted that money, Kyle would have wired it to an offshore betting site within the hour. And when he lost, because he always loses, the people he owed wouldn't have sued. They would have shown up in person. I looked at Kyle, shaking, eyes flicking between the papers and me. He knew exactly who was coming. I'm the only reason you're not facing fraud charges or worse, I told him. I cleared your ledger. You're debt-free. Starting from zero is the gift. The house money was the price of your freedom. Drake didn't look relieved. He looked robbed. You manipulated us, he hissed. You waited for us to sell the house so you could take it. I didn't make him gamble. I didn't make you sign the deed, I said, standing and smoothing my blazer. I just positioned myself to catch the wreckage when you inevitably crashed. I didn't steal. I collected. And unlike Kyle, I have the paperwork. That's enough. Drake roared, snatching the blue folder and ripping the pages in half. Paper tore through the room like a verdict being shredded. He stepped between me and the door, blocking the only exit. I don't care about your shell companies or judgments. I'm your father. You do what I say, or you're not leaving. It wasn't a negotiation anymore. It was containment. Kyle's face changed when the zero balance finally hit him. He didn't look like my brother. He looked like a cornered man who needed cash to keep pretending. She's laughing at us, Dad, he whispered, then lunged toward the title officer's desk and grabbed a heavy letter opener. Transfer it back, he screamed. Open the laptop and send it back. My heart kicked hard. Law, paperwork, moral high ground. None of it mattered with Drake blocking the doorway and Kyle waving a weapon. I turned to my mother, waiting for her to stop it. Harper moved, straight to me. She clamped onto my arm, nails digging in, pinning me in place. Not protecting me. Holding me down. Just give it to him, Nicole, she sobbed. Don't make him do something. Give him the money and we can all go home. Why are you so stubborn? That betrayal hit harder than anything else. She wasn't begging him to stop. She was begging me to surrender so he wouldn't have to feel guilty about forcing it. Mom, let go, I said, my voice shaking for the first time. Save him, she pleaded, tightening her grip. He's your brother. Kyle stepped closer, eyes wild. 3 seconds, Nicole. 1. I didn't touch the laptop. I slowly raised my free hand and pointed to the upper corner of the room. You really should have checked the security protocols, I whispered. The door burst open. 2 uniformed officers filled the doorway. Off-duty police assigned to the building. Drop it, the lead officer barked. Drop the weapon and step back. Kyle froze, then the letter opener clattered to the carpet. Drake tried to boom his way through it. This is a family meeting. But the badge didn't flinch. Back against the wall. Now. Drake got shoved aside like furniture. The second officer grabbed Kyle, turned him around and cuffed him. The click of metal cut straight through Harper's scream. No. Don't hurt him, he's a good boy, she cried, releasing my arm to rush them. I stood, arm throbbing where her nails had left marks. I picked up my bag. The officer glanced at the red crescents on my skin, the torn papers, the dropped letter opener. Ma'am, are you injured? I'm fine, I said, steady. He didn't touch her. Harper sobbed. Nicole, tell them it was a misunderstanding. I looked at her, terrified, not for me but for Kyle. He wanted me to lie. To protect the person who'd tried to force me to sign away my own money. He is my brother, I said, and Harper sagged with relief. I corrected, voice turning cold. Now he's a man who tried to threaten a creditor over a defaulted debt. I nodded at the torn documents. That transfer is what he owes me. He didn't like the collection methods. You're pressing charges? Drake choked, staring at me like I was the villain. You'll ruin his life. He ruined his own life when he picked up a weapon, I said. I'm just filing the paperwork. They dragged Kyle out, crying now, begging his parents to fix it. But the check had cleared. The police were real. And I was done negotiating. My parents stared at me, broken, furious, horrified. You're a monster, Harper whispered. No, Mom, I said, walking into the hallway. I'm the one who finally sent you the bill. A week later, the quiet in my apartment doesn't feel lonely. Feels like equity. I sit on my balcony with coffee and a notification. My high-yield savings posted its first interest payment. Small but clean. Money I didn't have to bleed for. The fallout was predictable. Kyle is out on bail, but the charge is only the beginning. I sold the remaining judgment rights to a collection agency known for being relentless. He'll spend years looking over his shoulder. Drake and Harper lost the house. The quitclaim deed was signed and notarized before the chaos, so the sale went through. A young couple moves in next month, unaware the place was ever a battlefield. My parents are in a motel off the highway, texting me in alternating waves of begging and rage. The latest from my mother. How could you do this? You stole our home. I don't reply. You didn't lose the house because of me. You lost it the moment you chose to sacrifice me to save him. You bet your future on a lie. And when the bill came due, I made sure the payment cleared to the right person. Delete. Block. Rick. Harper. Kyle. One by one. With every tap I feel lighter. I didn't just get the money. I refunded myself for 29 years of being the invisible daughter, the backup plan, the scapegoat. The sun is shining. My account is full. And for the first time in my life, I'm completely free. I walked away with $185,000 and zero regrets. But I want to ask you, at what price would you sell your relationship with your family? Or are there betrayals no amount of money can fix? Tell me in the comments.